Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast on the road. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, John and I are on the road. We are on our way back from Ironhorse in Perry, Georgia. We're currently recording on the highway.
In 2 miles, use the left 3 lanes to take exit 156 toward I-475 North.
So as you might have heard, we are on the road from Perry to back to Atlanta to get our flight into Canada. We just completed Ironhorse, and we thought it'd be a good idea to do an episode where we just talk about our immediate thoughts, like right after having completed this sort of 2-day adventure, and to share with you sort of our initial thoughts before we get home and there's enough distance that gets set in before we sort of think about things differently or what have you. So while things are really fresh. We're going to do several episodes, I think, on Ironhorse, just a bunch of different experiences that different people had. But yeah, it's super exciting, I think. And we before we get into sort of the event itself, I think, I don't want to speak for John, but we had an amazing time just meeting everybody.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, like it's hard to really consider just what it's like to meet people that you don't really know at an event like that, and what you're going to get in terms of people and stuff like that. And I know that we had talked, and you're not on the Discord, John, very much, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But these, there's a lot of people who are as excited to meet, to shake their hand in person and sort of get to play with them. But
use the left 3 lanes to take exit 156.
But even for you, I think, getting to meet all these different people and like the thing that we share in common with everybody else, like I think that was, I don't know, like what was your experience meeting these players who you legit, like you've never ever even talked to them on the Discord, because like you said, you're not very often.
Well, I spoke to a few of those jokers. So I had a very, I don't know, baseline understanding of who it was that was going. Just hearing the stories from like Phil, getting the vibe of the boys. From Phil. It was just great. It was great. Like, I told a few people that, like, I've been playing Airsoft longer than I haven't. And I've been playing with the Storm Riders longer than I haven't. And, the game at Ironhorse, I was just rolling with like 25 to 27 Storm Riders. It just felt like being with just straight up with the boys.
Yeah. I think one of the things we've talked about before is like when we're playing with like randoms or renters or whatever, you can't necessarily count on people to do exactly what it is that you will want them to do in any given time. But I definitely this weekend felt like, oh yeah, we were all like focused on what we were trying to accomplish and acting as a unit. And very seldom did people just run off to do their own thing and then never come back.
Yep.
Right, which was super, super exciting. I think I want to talk about just like how the event itself was, because I think we're spending some time talking about people as well. Maybe in the future in this episode, and maybe in future episodes for sure, when we talk to some of those people as well. But I remember, firstly, it was hot.
Oh my God.
Like, I'd been preparing for months by doing heat training and stuff, and the sauna that I have at home goes up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 65 degrees Celsius or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, that's so hot. That's so hot. But I remember when we first got to America, like the heat was real, no question.
Oh my God.
And then on Friday evening at the safety brief and the faction brief, which lasted, I don't know, 15 hours, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
We were out and baking in the sun, and I could just feel my skin sizzling. It was so hot, and it was just so humid. There's no relief from the heat in any way.
Yeah.
Very little wind. We got some wind on Sunday, though, which is kind of nice, but the rest of the time it was just so hot. Yeah. I don't want to say we were not prepared, but I definitely didn't imagine that level of heat for sure.
No, it was all encompassing. Like, I know on Saturday it started to rain during the initial brief before we touched off. And, like, we were roasting, and then they just put water on the frying pan, and then they just turned the heat up to maximum, and we
Yeah.
were just steaming. We were steamed broccoli
Yeah.
by the whistle. It was wild.
It was interesting for them to move the start time in the way that they did, because like their whole idea was we want to move the start time so you're not out playing in the sun, which is fair, except that formation was at 2,
Yeah.
right? Which means that people had to show up around 1. So yeah, you're not playing in the sun, but you're still out in the sun during that time.
Yeah, and another thing to consider is like bringing all of the stuff from your car, from like the parking lots or parking strips, whatever you want to call them, which can be pretty long. I mean, with like the amount of players that were there, like you can get if you show up late and you don't have like a battle wagon or anything like that, you really are in for a rude awakening, especially if you got anything to carry outside of your kit that you brought.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know like again, the thing is if you're carrying a lot of kit, like yes, you're not playing a game, but you're exerting yourself.
Yep.
And you're exerting yourself at the peak of the day, right? I
Yeah.
think as we as we started playing the day, like we spent the first 2.5 hours in the tunnels, just guarding the tunnels on for Foxtrot 1, which was our squad, mine and John's squad. And Foxtrot 2 was guarding buildings 18 and 19, which admittedly, as we talked about with the platoon lead, we knew wasn't super thrilling gameplay, but we were doing
Speak for yourself.
well, I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. But like, I know for some of the guys that like we want to be doing something, but we understand it's part of the bigger plan, whatever, which is not really the point. But the reality was like, for those 2.5 hours, we were at least in the shade,
Yeah.
waiting for the enemy while they were trying to fight into our positions, unsuccessfully, I might add, because we were really great. But we were in the shade, so we got to spend 3 p.m. to about 5:30 p.m. By 6 p.m., by the time we rolled into the fob, we got relieved. We had spent the peak hours of sunlight really in the shade, which was great. But the other team was baking in the sun trying to get to us. So we know that at the end of the event, they said that our faction, CDF and SD, right, Civilian Defense Force and Sierra Dynamics, suffered 0 heat casualties during the event, while the opposite team, Cost, they had at the very minimal 20 heat casualties that needed medical attention. And part of that is because the heat and the conditions are so brutal. Like it was so difficult to be operating in an environment. And even in the tunnels, outside of the sun, I still had a moment where I took a knee and Jack, Sam's son, brought me out a frozen water bottle or semi-frozen water bottle. And I was just drinking it and I was like thinking like I feel like I'm not heat casing, but I'm a little lightheaded and I just need to take a second.
Yeah.
And the team medic Steve came over. He's like, "Hey Phil," I was like, "Can you give me 5 minutes? I just need to just get my head on straight."
Yeah. Like once the ripcord was pulled and we were given the green light to go, and we were doing that little jog down the tunnel, down the strip, I found it was good. We were rolling, and all of a sudden, like I was not clear on which buildings we were supposed to move to, and I guess I was a little unsure of what our initial tasking was. Outside of because I thought the buildings to our right, next to the intersection of the entrance to the tunnel, was like building 18 and 19, which was like our tasking was to hold those buildings down and the entrance to the tunnel. So I started moving forward, and we started getting into contact, and I broke forward once Sam gave me the green light that we were going to move, and I started moving forward, and I found that I got extremely overwhelmed, like in a way that I had never experienced being overwhelmed before in my entire life. And I was just like, I can't right now. This is way too much. And yeah, it was like a full body tingling going on, and I was like, I have to go back to the fob. And I went back to the fob for like an hour, and then I regrouped with the fellas, and I drank like I had so much water in my system. Like I had to pee the entire time, even while I was like clipping hard at the beginning. I'm so happy that I found my limit right off the rip, and I didn't move past it.
Yeah, able to throttle yourself
Yeah,
through that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And like I don't do well in the heat anyways, and I found that limit and I didn't cross the threshold and I noticed it early. I took some time and I was conscious about it and I was able to go for a lot longer than I thought I was going to be able to go, and I was able to perform at a level that I was very impressed with throughout the day. Because I mean, the longest games we would have played would have been like, I mean, the longest game we played this year was like 6 hours or something like that.
Yeah, well, you guys did, but I mean, I ran the game, so
Yeah. So I'm just speaking for myself. So like, and I was very impressed. Like that game, like, granted, it was a cool day, like overcast, a little rainy and stuff like that. But I was moving. I was being aggressive, running the length of the field multiple times in that game, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm actually doing all right. And after that game, when I went home, I was like, okay, I'm not rode off. This is awesome. All right, maybe I am in a good place physically and mentally to be able to perform in this event. But once the ripcord was pulled, the heat is no joke.
Yeah.
And just a matter of throttling myself back. And when I came back to it, you guys had established a foothold, and we were doing work. The whole like Foxmon was doing great, and I just moved up to reinforce the line.
Yeah.
And from that perspective, it was after that moment, it was go time for me. That was when I was able to really cook.
Yeah, you were starting to be a silly goose at that point for sure. Just by virtue of the fact that you were, I think, and like it's obviously you don't want to feel what that limit feels like. It would be better if you didn't. But I think contextually, it's almost as important to know exactly where that limit is, rather than like not knowing and then pushing yourself beyond that point accidentally. Which allowed you then to quote some of the guys, just like go crazy. John's going crazy in the tunnels, right? And it's like, but you knew that was within your sort of operating parameter, right? Of like, okay, if I do this, I'm fine. So I think we said it a lot in the communication when we're prepping for Iron Horse with all the people who were there. The heat is no joke, and it's easy to say that, and it's hard to understand until you have experienced it and you realize like, okay, yes, this is what it is. I mean, even on the first day, I think one of our players had a little bit of heat issue, so we needed to take care of them. And same thing on the second day. Like there was another player who was having a bit of a time, and like there is nothing at all embarrassing about being in that situation.
No.
That's the reality. I mean, when you think about it, like in a silly kind of way, it's a privilege to be able to be in an environment where you can push yourself that hard.
Yeah.
You obviously don't want to do that, and I don't think people should be proud of being a heat cat or anything like that.
Exactly.
But there's no shame in either of being like, you know what, like I pushed really hard and you probably shouldn't have, and I got in that situation. And everyone was really concerned, but those people were fine. Like they did not require medical attention. Like they just needed a little bit of rest, a little bit of water, electrolytes, and then back in the fight. And they were back the next day, so that's great, excellent. But yeah, so I think that was part. Now, in terms of the AO itself, irrespective of the heat, I remember how I felt just walking onto that AO on the first day. Guardian Center was just incredible, and it was an incredible feeling to be able to walk on with people who I liked, don't get me wrong, with people who'd played there before and they knew about it and they could tell us stuff about the AO. Like I remember walking on and Chaz was telling me, hey, this building, like this ruined building, like it's hydraulically supported so that they can raise or lower it to simulate more, like a bigger building or a smaller building. I'm like, oh, cool. Like I had no idea. Todd is like, hey, when I played at I think it's a Viking tactical game that they played, or I don't really remember the name of the actual organizers, but it was a Guardian Center as well. He's like, oh yeah, when we played here, this wasn't here. They had moved that there. They had a ton of vehicles there. Like, so you could also see how the AO changes to suit the clients who are there at any given time. We were really relatively relegated to the town portion. the tunnels that were open to us in the woods next to those tunnels, which we didn't really go into. I mean, we fought guys in them, but in those woods by the C-130.
Yeah.
But we didn't really get in to too much of that.
And for point of reference, the C-130 was just on the roadway out of the main entrance to the tunnel from our fob. And so, because they dynamically moved some of the stuff around the field just to make it a bit more dynamic from instead of just rehashing prior placements or something like that.
And like some of the stuff that they that there was other stuff in play too. Like we did spend a lot of time in the lake houses in that district area. And the road to the north of that, I know Chaz and Steve did some work at that flag in the north, just northwest of the lake house. And then the soccer field was in play too. And then really, like, the rest of the field was open. And I think there were objectives there, but we, as the Storm Riders Foreign Legion, did not get to see any of that stuff because that really wasn't the tasking that we were provided, which, on the one hand is, kind of a bummer. I get it. But on the other hand, that's the mission, right? You have to do it. But I remember just walking on the AO and saying to like John and to other people, like, what are we even doing here? Like, this is unbelievable.
The tiniest tadpoles of the biggest ocean.
Yeah. And like like we've played airsoft for so long I think like many people in fields that are like, just make do, right? Like, yeah, we'll build whatever shelter or cover we can with whatever's available. It's pallets, it's scrap wood, it's this, that, the other thing. It's a Connex box. Oh, we got a fuselage, we're going to use that. Like, all that kind of stuff, which I'm not taking that from anyone. Like, that's totally fine. And we've had amazing games at Redcliffe and amazing games at Frontline. And I'm sure all of you at your locals can say the same thing. But walking on a field, which is like, this is a purpose-built building, right? This is an actual structure. And we're going to go fight in and around it, right? There's stuff in there to simulate a gym or a hospital or a bar or whatever, or a church.
Yeah.
And we're going to go fight in there. And it's okay for us to do that. It was like, that's what it's there for.
Mm-hmm.
That was really wild. And that really hit me right at the gate, like walking in, just being like, wow, like this is something else. Then you turn the corner and there's an MRAP.
Yeah.
And the MRAP is, and it's like, oh yeah, that's one of them. It's like, what do you mean one of them? It's like, there's 2 MRAPs on this field.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? And then I look to my right and there's a crashed building and there's a crashed helicopter in that building. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. It was pretty
Right?
nuts. It was pretty nuts to see just the level that these guys operate in.
Yeah.
Like the standard to which they're trained and stuff like that, and the privilege that we were given to be at such a I guess for lack of a better word, like a prestigious venue. Like, it was
Definitely.
crazy. It was insane. Like, the baby's tadpole.
And like, I think when we finally get to FOB, we start getting situated and like, it's hot and we're putting the tent up and it's hot and we're just like itching and raring to go. And then finally we get the call and it's like, it's 10 minutes to game time, 5 minutes to game time. And then the CDF's slash SD commander, Rich, says a bunch of stuff. And then somebody pops a black smoke grenade and then we start piling out into the tunnel. And that's when the game begins in earnest. And like, okay, cool. So we're running down this tunnel and I mean, like, I'm no stranger to running in the heat and all this kind of stuff. And so it seemed like a good idea at the time, but very quickly people were starting to slow down because it was tough. It was hard going.
And
So
it just finished raining.
yeah, and it's so muggy, so humid. We finally get in our position, we start fighting, etc. And then the second thing that blows my mind happens, and that's the pyro starts going off.
Yeah.
And like I've heard of like, back in like World War I and like World War II where they just had this like rolling, like just cannonade all the time of artillery shells. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's exactly what that was like, but there were so many grenades being thrown and just going off and exploding constantly for the first like, I'm gonna say the first hour, it was just nonstop, like grenades all over in our tunnel, like people trying to get into the back door, eventually getting into the back door and then throwing so many grenades in and then throw many grenades out until eventually Chaz was able to get that door closed with a bunch of other people, and because they only opened from the inside. So the way that had happened was some of the people inside the tunnel tried to get out through that door, but there were cosplayers on the outside who just grabbed the door and opened it, and then they started to be able to throw fire in. And so it was so imperative for us to keep those doors closed, but those rogue CDF players decided to open it up. So we fought. It felt like a very long time. It probably wasn't that long. But we fought a period of time to get it closed. And then after that, we were good in that tunnel. Like we held it for 2.5 hours. I think I said at the start. And really, when we were talking, just because we've been talking basically nonstop about what we did since we got off, you were saying, you were at the front of that tunnel with Chaz, and there's no way that someone was coming in from the outside with bright illumination into this dark illumination area.
Yeah.
And being able to see Chaz from where his position, where was he? He was behind like a grill or like a.
Yeah, there was like some looked like batting cages. And
Yeah.
there was like 4 or 5 of them just off the right side of the door, and then there was like just a wooden box full of like loose wood pieces.
Yeah.
And I mean, if he wasn't wearing yellow goggles, I think he would be pretty well invisible, just due to the nature of the surface he was like shielding himself behind.
Right. Yeah, and I remember looking around in between bits of me yelling at you to grab your gun or whatever.
Yeah.
Looking at all the players who were around us, and in particular, like looking back towards some of the barrels where we had like our support gunners and all this kind of stuff. And then I look a little bit further down back towards the tunnel, and I'm gonna say maybe 30 meters behind me. There's our platoon leader, Big Red, and he's just literally in the tunnels with us.
Yeah.
He's not back at FOB just like looking at Ares or whatever. He's in the tunnels with us, making sure that, everything that we're doing is working.
And everyone's okay.
And everyone's okay. Yeah. And it's, I know Sam and I started rotating people back to the FOB to make sure that they could take off a bandage and like get a drink of water and come back. So we did that. But Big Red was just, and shout out to him, man. Matt Kruger was out with us. He's been on podcast before. If you're just listening, and you weren't there with us, like he's been on podcast before, and he was there. He was running our teams basically, and it was so good to have him there physically present with us.
Yeah.
Because for me, as a first time, I was saying to you before, like, if as a first time milsim attendee, having your platoon leader, so essentially like your boss's boss, show up and be like, yeah, command thinks we're doing a great job, keep doing that. Or, hey guys, we're going to go take this building now, follow me. That's like mini missions, right? It's like little tiny encounters that put you back into the game and give you that little flavor that you definitely don't get at your local, right?
So the confidence boost of being able to know that we're doing something effectively.
Yes.
Like, that was awesome. Like, straight up, being told that you guys are doing a good job, it's like, it's awesome, especially when it's not, like, filler pad.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose.
Because, like, I mean, from my perspective, it's like, yeah, dude, that was sick. You guys are doing awesome. I'm like, yeah, dude. But, like, this is an outsider's perspective being like, yeah, guys, you guys are all squared away. You guys are actually, like, you superseded my expectations with this one. Like, great job.
He told us that multiple times. It's like, I was so impressed with the way that you guys were able to come together as just a group of randos from a Discord showing up. And he was saying, like, when you show up, well, we'll see what these guys are, see what how they are or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said we were right on basically from minute one. So much so that when it was time for us to finally get relieved after 2.5 in the tunnels, 2.5 hours in the tunnels, he's like, I got to find someone who I trust to fill your guys' shoes, because we don't want to lose these tunnels.
Yeah.
But he also didn't want to leave us there for.
I mean, I would have been more than happy to stay in that tunnel all day. I was having a ball because, I mean, our primary objective was keep the tunnel
under our control. Yeah.
Keep it us. And to me, that's like, I like playing the objective, and that to me, that's the most paramount objective, because if they get in there and they get a foothold, then our spawn is literally like 150 feet away from that door. So it was imperative.
And I think one of the things that really helps in situations like, because I mean, like, we've had this situation before and we've talked about it before where eventually airsofters get bored because this is a game. right? And they just wander off and do something that's not boring, which is, understandable. But the impact of what we did, it's different if you're told later on. It's like, oh, you guys did a great job and like blah, blah, blah. Matt, again, our platoon leader, was walking around saying, hey guys, like I'm monitoring the command chatter right now, and you should see the amount of objectives that are being called in right now because cost can't go anywhere. Because they really only had two avenues of advance coming through the tunnels and the area that we were in, and between us, Foxtrot 1 in the tunnel, and Foxtrot 2 in buildings 18 and 19, which was just north of our position. That whole avenue of advance was completely denied to them, which means the only thing they could do is push further west and try and go up and around, which was taking a lot of time. And they were effectively being penned into that very small area, which left our teams that were being assigned actual missions, which, as we said, we didn't get any, but that's fine. That's not how it goes sometimes. But they were able to come back. And I remember going back to FOB at some point in the evening with Sam and just seeing the pile of stuff that they had brought back. Like there was missile parts galore. There was like multiple servers. I can't remember what else. There was just a pile of stuff in there. And that was all because, well, cost couldn't go anywhere on the field. So they had free reign to just do whatever they needed to do.
Yeah.
And that was facilitated by us. So I think Matt said to us, "Is like you're making me look really good," which I mean, fair enough, right? That's how it works. But yeah, it was good to get out of the tunnels too, as well. Like after 2.5 hours, we're pretty spent because we were on task for so long. But then as soon as we got off the tunnels and back to FOB and like bombed up and ready to go again. Then we linked up with another Foxtrot squad, and that turned into absolute chaos.
Yeah, because verticality.
Yeah,
It's and urban fighting is crazy hard, crazy. Plus the heat, there was a lot of factors that we are not familiar with.
No. I mean, I remember being against the building and Nick just looks at me. He's like, hey, Phil, watch the second story. I'm like, oh, shit, there's a second story?
Yeah.
And I never even grokked that. And I'm like, immediately, put my gun up and I'm looking up to the windows and stuff like that. But that didn't come to me naturally. Like, I had to be reminded.
Yeah.
Nick, I feel like anytime I was rolling with Nick, I was being very well taken care of. Like, he was like just communicating exactly what I needed to know to feel the right level of confidence all the time, especially in nighttime, because he was one of the noodle boys, and I could not see much of anything / anything.
Yeah.
One of the difficulties, and we talk about nighttime play, at some point, but definitely they said there would be lights on in the town. They were not kidding. That town was fully illuminated.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Until they started turning them off really late in the game, like around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. They started turning off building lights. And then it got real challenging because, well...
PID.
Yeah, nobody knew. And, I don't want to talk too much about some of the sketchy play, but there were definitely uniform violations that were leading to confusion.
My God, yes.
I saw many cosplayers who had green pants, but they had a black top, and black was our faction color, right?
Well, one of our sister.
Well, one of our sister faction colors, but for all intents and purposes, in our game, if they were wearing black, you don't shoot them. If they were wearing green, you do shoot them. Yeah. So having someone with green pants and a black top, I talked to the command chat and I was like, hey, so this is what we're seeing. Like, what are we supposed to do with that? And they were like, listen, if you see green pants and a black top, just shoot them.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a uniform violation. We're not going to do anything about it. Just engage. Okay, perfectly. Heard. But yeah, it made stuff way, way more complicated, especially because some people who were playing did not go to the faction briefing or did not pay attention during the faction briefing and didn't know what our call and response path code was. Right?
I got to speak on that for a second. That was, for me, that was the coolest thing.
Me too.
That was being afforded the luxury of not knowing who and what is around what corner, and you have to be able to PID them. Just given the simple fact of PID being a real concept is crazy to me. it's never an issue. It's never an issue at our home field. Like, being that we're so, like, so comfortable there, we just know the player base. Like, PID is like, oh yeah, PID is all visual.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
And it's like having friendly fire incidents occur because like you don't know the challenge, and that was so cool.
Yeah.
That was so cool. And to the black team member that I shot, I am not sorry. You deserved it.
Yeah, 100%. It happened to me too. I was in the tunnels and a door to our right opened, and I saw players coming in, and I went, Marco, and they said, Polo, and I just started lighting them up because our passcode was Marco,
Yeah.
and the answer was Marco. And so they said Polo, and I just lit them up, and they started like, getting really upset and saying, bring a medic, blah, blah. I'm like, if you're on our team, why did you say Polo? And they're like, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's really
on you.
unfortunate,
That's
but
on
like,
you.
that's how it goes. And then later on, I saw Big Red again going around people being like, "Hey, if I say Marco, what do you say?" Right?
Yeah.
To make sure that people had understood that was important because you're totally right. Like we never ever have to do PID. One of the other things that happened to me was like, who all is the other people? Because I was on the radio on the command net, and that was so much fun. Running my radio, oh, that was so good.
Mhm.
And I remember we were pushing one like 3-story building or whatever, and Big Red again is right behind us. And, we're doing work and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, "I need you guys to go up there and talk to those guys and figure out what's going on." So I go up to those guys, and they're not interested in talking to me, which is insane,
Yeah.
right? So I go back to Big Red, and I'm like, they don't want to talk to me. They're doing their own thing, and he's like, "All right." Right.
Yeah.
Later on, at another time, we're linking up with another group, and like I had to ask them because I don't know. I'm like, okay, so we're Foxtrot 1. Here's what we're doing. There's like, who are you?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're Echo 8. And I'm like, cool. And I got on the radio. I'm like, Foxtrot Actual, Foxtrot 1, linked up with Echo 8 at grid whatever. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like that is boss.
Yeah.
And it's a small thing, but like, and for those of you who've played Mill Sims in the past, you're like, yeah, sure, that's just what you do.
Yeah.
But when you've never ever done it, and you've only seen it in like videos or TV or whatever, you being the one doing that, and then your commander coming, Foxtrot 1's Foxtrot Actual, understood, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And in the moment, it's just like, it's the mission, it's the job. And then after, like, I don't know if that happened to you multiple times, but for me, like, I would get like time and opportunity and be like, whoa, that was amazing.
Yeah, and for me, it was all the tiny little things, and
Yeah.
like, just the novel little baby things, just like the fact you can get lost.
Yeah.
Like, that's a crazy idea. Like, I hardly rolled with you in all this game. Like, just because I got so turned around because the AO is just so
Yeah.
big, and just learning the field, like not having a map or anything like that, and just rolling with someone that was like relatively competent with the AO. They might have played there like once or twice or something like that. They would still have a good idea of where things were and how to get to certain buildings, but it was just ragtag, and it was
Yeah.
pretty sweet. Like, it was it was it was just awesome.
All the small stuff, you're totally right. Like, I remember I was up top of second story with Chris from Nomad Airsoft. He was the RTO for Foxtrot 2.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were linked up with them. It was on Sunday, so we were just mixing and matching teams. Like, we didn't care. We're just rolling together. It was so much fun. But he was the man with the plan, right? And so we're up top of this building. I was talking to Chris on Discord as well, and I mentioned that to him. He's like, "Yeah, I do this." So he was up top and he's looking out the windows, right? He's trying to get situational awareness, which is fine. But he's the man with the plan. So I went up to him and was like, "Hey, Skipper, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the windows because if you die, we don't have a medic and you're the only one who knows what we're doing." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, that's fair." And he's like, "Whatever you're doing, someone else can do that for you." I did the same thing with Big Red. Big Red was up there in another building with us, just moving around. And I was like, "Hey, Skipper, I need you to move away from the windows because you're the boss right now. And you also happen to be a medic. So we need you to not die. That's very important."
Yeah.
But Big Red, it was so funny because he's like, I appreciate you saying that, but you don't have to worry about me. Just play the game. Like, I'm semi-staff. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool, but I would really prefer if you would just stand inside the building instead of by the window, if you don't mind. It would
Yeah.
make me feel better. And he was like, all right. And then after he went and did a bunch of stuff, and then he came back and that's when he gave me the AMS challenge coin.
Oh, nice.
He was like, you deserve this. And I was like, cool. That's dope. Because he had told us, like, I'm going to be in the field, but don't worry about me. But at the same time, like, I'm worried about you because you're a platoon leader. I do not want you to get captured. I don't want you to get searched. Like, I don't want any of that to happen. Anyways, it was those little moments that are lost. I think, they're not lost, but when you're accustomed to playing this type of game, they're just become old hat.
Yeah.
And when you've never ever done it before, you're like, wow, like, this is crazy. This is the coolest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Reaching through doors with the group, throwing grenades in windows.
Blowing yourself up.
You blew yourself up with a grenade, right?
Yes.
Was that a bad throw?
It was a deliberate throw.
Okay.
And let's just say there's one less player on the green team, as well as on the tan team.
Oh yeah.
That would be myself. And dude, like the pyro, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And just how loud it is, like holy smokes! We had a bleed out timer of like 5 minutes when you get smoked, and after I blew myself up, I was like, I can't think. I'm just gonna leave right now. Like 'cause my drum was ringing, and I was like, I just need to get out of here. It was like second story of a building, and I was like, I can't. I don't know what's going on. Which way's left? Which way's right? What team am I on?
It's crazy.
Where am I?
It's funny because like after the event, or after the first day, I was like, you know what? I think we could use pyro at frontline. I think it'd be totally fine. And then I realized I'd been wearing hearing protection the entire time.
I mean, it wasn't that bad, but in an enclosed space, like especially like a cement one, let me tell you, there's nowhere for that sound to get absorbed.
Oh well, when I was on the second story of that building and grenades were coming in through all the windows and stuff during our last stand, which I was actually for a very brief period, I was actually afraid. Like I was just like concerned.
Yeah, I was same for me. Right before I blew myself up, I was with Matt and Galen, and they got smoke going up the stairs, and I was point man, and I survived somehow. And they had no idea I was there, and it was two full squads of cops rolling in, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and I see all the white lights coming through up the staircase, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, can I sneak up through the other staircase? And I started hearing people like, it's all green, come on in. And I'm like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. So I was like shaking at my grenade, being like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And hell, I did it.
Yeah, but
Dude, seeing those guys come around the corner sweeping hard with their lights on, I'm like, this is so aggressive, I'm going to get smoked. I was shit bait, dude, like straight up.
yeah, there were some real moments for sure.
Like CQB is terrifying.
Yeah.
Like
we thought we knew what CQB was. We had no idea.
Oh, dude, if you do CQB, you will die for sure. Like avoid it like the plague.
Yeah, especially like you have CQB at the indoor field or whatever at frontline.
That's not this. That's
It's
not
not the
CQB.
same.
That's
It's
just
not at
shoot
all.
house. That's
Yeah.
just shoot house. CQB, there's pressure.
Yeah,
Like there's stakes. Like especially if you're like the last one in a building and you have two squads rolling and there's two staircases and you're getting pincered. Oh,
yeah.
mama, the window's looking like a good option.
Yeah, the two-story structure I was in with Matt Kruger was just completely open, and two stairwells at either side.
Yeah.
And like that was it. And so we're up there and they're shooting in the windows and the grenades are coming in the bottom story. There's a guy in one corner, he's got a pump shotgun and a pistol.
Nice.
And then another guy, and like they're coming in, they're throwing grenades, and like grenades are landing upstairs. And I had my hearing protection on, so like it didn't seem that loud, but in retrospect, I bet it would have been extremely loud
Oh,
because there's concrete floor and a tin roof, right?
yeah.
But I'm like, oh my god, this is bad. And then blissfully, I was hit by a grenade, which means I could put my kill rag, my dead rag on, so that I didn't have to get shot point blank by some dude coming up the steps because it was during the day. Because he would have seen my kill rag. I got shot point blank in the leg. You can still see the bruise right there.
Holy smokes.
One single shot to the leg left a bruise about the size of a toonie, for you Canadians out there, on my inner thigh.
That's a paintball weld.
Yeah, because my guy was probably, I don't know, 10, it's hard to see because it was in the dark,
Yeah.
but it was like 10, 15 feet away, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was crazy, crazy. And the CQB at night, bro.
Yeah, it was sick.
They, I did an assault on a 3-story building with the noodle guys, but I couldn't see anything because it was dark.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, well, you noodle guys go in. They're like, no, we need your gun. I'm like, for what? I can't see. They're like, we'll just tell you where to shoot. I was
Yeah.
like, okay. So Jordan turns around. He's like, hey, Phil, can you see the cat eyes in the back of my helmet? I was like, yep. He's like, okay, follow my cat eyes, take really big steps, put your hand on my shoulder. I was like, okay. And so we went up 3 flights of stairs, me behind his cat eyes, and then like cleared the entire building. And blissfully, there was nobody in there. And it was like,
awesome.
it was like just after 11 o'clock at night.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really crazy. I think, especially like when the first night was starting to wrap up, like there was, the Milsim effect that they talked about people just leaving when it gets dark, 100% true.
Yeah, yeah.
There was like during the day, it was packed full of people.
But it was sick how everyone dipped at the evening, like during the evening, and like only the extremos were there, and only the people that truly wanted that experience were there. And so like the fights were just so intense.
Yeah.
And like it was like round 7, and you're just kind of just your arms just don't have any power behind them anymore, and you're just still going.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember we moved the aid station. It was like 10 o'clock. We recovered the aid station, the mobile aid station from Cost. We recovered it from them, like for hours from them. And then we radioed into command and be like, okay, do you want us to move it? They're like, yeah, move it to the east side of building 21. It's like, okay, no problem. So we get a couple of the guys to go and pick up it's like a canopy sort of situation. I don't know if you saw it. But so they pick up the canopy and they start running building 21. We provide like support fire and all this kind of stuff to make sure, because it wasn't being contested at the time, so we could move it, but we want to make sure that we didn't get snuck up on or whatever.
Yeah.
And we move it, and then the guys are like, so do you want to just go back to FOB? And I remember, and I said, and maybe this was a little bit of bravado at the time or hubris, but I was like, I paid for 12 hours. I'm going to get 12 hours.
Yeah.
Right? It was 12 hours, but whatever. And my intent was really to keep going until 12, and I really wanted to do, and they were like, okay, let's keep going. And, we just kept hammering and kept hammering, but you're right. Like the fights were so intense because everyone was just located where everyone knew other players were, because at that point the numbers were so dwindled down that it didn't make sense to go wandering around the field just randomly, right? Yeah.
Like I think I was supposed to follow the Storm Wiz and someone else, and they got a bit of a jump on me, so I was a little bit trailing behind in the nighttime, and it just ended up. I got turned around. I was like, okay, I have no idea where anyone is, so I'm completely by myself right now. And I'm just going to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Because I know how to handle myself just in a normal game by myself if I find myself isolated or whatever. Yeah. And I knew what the objective was, so I knew where to hang around. And I started walking through the tunnel, and I just remember looking forward, and it was so hazy with smoke. Someone must have thrown a smoke grenade in the tunnel, and all I was seeing were these lasers, these tracer BBs flying through, flashlight flashes, little pops. And I'm like, okay, well, this is obviously where the action is, and it's in the primary objective. So I'm just gonna do what I do best, and that's go secure the objective. And knowing the relative layout of the tunnel. From staying in there for a while in the early afternoon, I knew enough to know, like, okay, there's a couple breach points that these guys might not be too aware of. So if we can finesse this in such a way, we can easily get these guys and get on their flank and just hit them from the rear especially with ranks. And having that accessibility kind of made it so like you can keep your position relatively hidden because no one knows where these rags are coming from.
Yeah.
And, I rallied a couple guys, and then I saw you guys on my right moving forward, not aware of the tunnel situation. And I said, boys, I need you all here now, because if I had everyone with me, we would have taken that system in like 5 minutes. But instead, it was like a 45-minute slugfest of like going through breach points, being like the furthest CDF member inside the tunnel, online, on the same firing line, just facing the opposite direction as the cost team. And I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to flush these guys out? Frags. So I pop a frag, and it hit the ceiling. And because, of course, why not?
Yeah.
And it came back towards me, so I scuttled into one of the little dividing room sectors.
Yeah.
And no one noticed. No one noticed. And then I started putting some fire down, and all I see are these white lights, green lasers coming around the corner looking for me. I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I was pretty close to the tunnel section. And I think it was four independent rooms inside this warehouse section. And I was 2 up. And so I was pretty close to where it was, the breach point was. And I noticed that they were starting to call out my position. So I said, oh God, oh God. It's just a matter of time before the frags start coming. And I saw the lights dip. I'm like, I got to make my move now. So I started, scurrying back. And all I hear is like, he squirted back. He squirted back. And I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I somehow got out of it, reoriented myself, got more people, went to a different breach point, started putting fire down. And eventually, more reinforcements came up. I had a game admin come forward, or start walking my way, and I was like, "Yo, Skip, you got frags?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right, come with me." And I said, "I need at least 1 frag in this position. When you have that done, throw 3 more." He's like, "All right, you got it." And so we just started working slowly and methodically. We had both firing points covered. We had good fire. We had fire superiority and enough GATs looking in that direction that we were able to secure the objective. And then we got to the furthest breach point that we could possibly get to, and we were able to take back the tunnel. And let me tell you how good that feeling was, seeing all these dead cost players. And I'm like, yeah, you guys just got rocked, dude. Are you kidding me? Like, we just took that by force. And I looked at this one guy and I was like, yo, Skip, good work. We did it. And he's like, yeah, dude, because he was one of the initial guys that I mustered for this call here.
Yeah.
And oh my God. And then leaving the tunnel, which is something I never did because my furthest limit of advance was to the gravel. I didn't move past that point, but I moved down the road to the left, and I got to slap the 130, and I was like, oh, yes, mission successful. We got it, boys.
Yeah.
And I went back and I told the AMS dudes, I was like, all right, this is what the situation is. Our limit of advance is we're completely clear to the 130 and that brown building just off the left corner. He's like, all right, perfect. He's like, how do you know that? I was like, because I slapped it. When I see the dust in my hand, he's like, no, it's all good. And these guys were all like amped. Like that was like a great push. And I was like, yeah, dude, you guys crushed it. Good job.
Yeah.
It was awesome, man. It was the coolest. And then working with the Nods guys, like, holy smokes, man. Like, if you've seen Sicario, then you know how powerful silhouette shots can be.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me tell you, Frosty got some excellent footage from a night offensive that Fox 1 and Fox 2 put off. But we were met with terrain issues that we couldn't navigate.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to push the lake house. So the garden facility has this area which has lake houses in it, and the whole idea is to simulate like a flooded lake house area. And so the way that it's built is that it's built on a bit of an incline going down, and it's got 3 walls to basically retain, like the concrete walls to retain water so that they can flood it. But those walls are 10 feet high, so we were attacking the village from the top of those walls. There's no real way for us to drop down safely, especially at nighttime, into that area. So eventually, that was the first time that Sam looked at me and said, hey, Phil, you're squad lead now. And I was like, oh boy. And so we went to, link up with Fox 2 to go do that, and it just did not really work out.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's like, well, most of the guys who went on that mission did not have nods.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult for us to get anything done in that context because
Yeah.
all the lights were in the village. They weren't in the lake houses. And in retrospect, we were like, why did we send the no nods guys to the area that's pitch dark when there's like illuminated areas in the city that they could have been doing work in?
But if we were granted the opportunity of an access point into that lake house,
That would have been,
yeah,
way
exactly.
easier.
So
Yeah.
like once we got online and we were engaging the first lake house on the left side closest to the defilade,
Yeah.
next to the 10-foot wall, the longest one. I scuttled because the boys told us, all right, what we need is surprise, violence of action, and fire superiority. Those are the first three things that we need to be able to maneuver. Once we can establish this, then we can truly act on violence of action. So I was like, okay, this is, and like these are airborne boys. So I was like, this is a legit, like, this is like small unit tactics, like on the airborne level.
Yeah.
Oh, I was peaking hard.
Yeah.
And at dusk, and we, I took the far right extent, moving down to the T intersection, and next to I think the north parking lot. I think that's what it was.
Mhm.
And I went to the MRAP that was just on the very precipice of the lot. So, and there was a triple story building, which I've learned that you guys usually call them 3 stories,
Yeah.
but I don't know what that is. So it's all triple stories to me.
Yeah.
And I saw 2 full squads of green, and I was on the MRAP, and I was the furthest forward, looking for a breach point. And I was like, okay, the only breach point is at the town, and it's a slow, gradual into the lake houses. So I was like, that's just no way. We're just not going to be able to do this. And once I saw those 2 full squads, I started boogieing back to the defilade, and I say, boys, we got 2 full squads right here. And I don't think anyone heard me or anyone saw me, but then slowly but surely we had a couple guys start trickling down my way.
Mhm.
And I learned after the fact that Fox 2 SL was starting to move to the left, trying to find a different breach point. But by the time he returned, there was some casualties,
Yeah.
and like the offensive kind of lost its steam. But I think if we had the affordability of a breach point, we would have secured that objective in no time at all. But we did secure a capture point, which was nice.
Yeah. And then I think they went on to sneak and get another one after that too.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So it wasn't a complete wash. It was just
No.
not what we expected. But
Yeah.
again, like I think that's
It was task failed successfully.
yeah, exactly. I think overall, like as we think about wrapping up this episode, like because we could talk about this for. I mean, we're eventually going to arrive to our destination, so we got to sort of wrap it up anyway. But we could talk about this forever, and I'm sure we're going to have more conversations. It's just a lot of this was just such a novel stimulus,
Yeah.
right? It's this kind of stuff that we've seen done so much, and being able to be a part of that, really gets you to live that experience and understand. Like, you see, it's like, why did they behave that way? Why did they do this? Oh, now I understand because I know what that feels like to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Right? I know what it feels like to be a no nods guy in a situation where I can't see my feet, but I also can't turn on my flashlight because the nods guys will get upset with me.
Yeah.
Right? Well, understandably, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really just really wild experience.
Yeah, it was American Milsim,
Yeah, it absolutely was.
and it lived up to every expectation that I had. I mean, oh, it was so good. I mean, it was airsoft at the end of the day. It was still like, just skirmish. Especially like when you're separated from like the command element and stuff like that, you just kind of have to find your own trouble and stuff, make the most of it. But it was just the luxury of playing in that environment was awesome.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. We could have been there picking our nose, and I would have been having a ball.
And I throughout the entire event, a few times I talked to Bo, who is one of the AMS guys. He's been on the podcast before in the lead up, and I was so glad to talk to him. He was so thrilled to know that we were out here having a good time. So big shout out to Bo and the American Milsim crew, because it's not easy putting off an event like that, and you're gonna have hits and you're gonna have misses. And I know that even in his own stuff, Bo was saying that they recognize that some stuff went well and some stuff didn't go so well.
Yeah.
and the conditions were hard, but I think they made a really good effort of it. And as a participant, I mean, I do have feedback I'm going to share with him for sure, but overall, like it was a smashing success for us. Like we had so much fun.
Yeah.
And we haven't really even talked about any of the Foreign Legion stuff and getting to meet those guys really and what that was like. So maybe we'll save that for another conversation. But that was a huge part of it too. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Obviously we're not done talking about Iron Horse, but this is this is our initial reaction just coming off the field. In the next couple, days and weeks, we'll be posting more and more footage and pictures and stuff of that event. So check that out on the Discord if you haven't already. The link is in the description. And so that's it for us right now. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.